All right, looks like we're recording now, and I am super excited to have on the show my buddy Trey. And this is a long time coming. Nice to see you, Trey. Trey and I have been friends for a long time, and really, like when I started activism, Trey was like one of those ever-present guys that I would see around where I live. And so we've been friends for a really long time, and it's been interesting, like to see how we've sort of branched off into our sort of like different areas of activism. You've started up the Animal Activism Collective, which used to be called the Animal Activism Mentorship, because it started out as like this sort of mentorship program that was really great for activists. But anyway, it's been, I've had some like peripheral involvement, but not completely involved. But I've been seeing you guys just have these amazing convergences where you've had hundreds of people show up, and you're just killing it, Trey. And I love to see it. So welcome to the show, Trey.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Thanks for all the kind words. I'm really happy to see you doing this kind of work because I don't know if you remember when we first met a long time ago. I was like, man, were you ever a journalist before? Because you just got the voice for it. I've always thought you had like a great voice for interviews and things like that. Uh, and I've been watching your work. You ask a lot of great questions and have some great guests on here, so I'm pleased to be amongst that company. And yeah, thanks for having me on.
Oh, no problem. And I mean, like I would have had you on a lot sooner, but I know you to be just a super busy guy, and you're doing such great work that sometimes, like when I do these interviews, I'm like calculating, am I taking them away from something they should be doing? But I mean, honestly, it would have almost been appropriate for me to start the show with you, like as my first episode, because that's kind of how I started activism. I mean, I still remember like the first, I don't think it was the very first activism event that I went to, because that was Case Farms, which I know you've been to in Morganton, North Carolina. Um, but one of the most formative times for me as an activist was this almost a week that we spent together in Eastern North Carolina. And I think that's where you and we already knew each other, but we really started to get to know each other there. And that was just really powerful. And it was sort of, to me, it sort of was like the precursor to what I see you guys doing at Animal Activism Collective. It was just like every form of activism, we did it. We did the cubes, we did the vigils, we did, we sort of like went and looked around and sort of did like almost investigatory stuff. And that's also where I believe you did your first speak out, and it was hella powerful. And I'd love to show that, but I'm not sure. But that was amazing speak out that you gave, and you seem to have no nerves or anything. But take me back to that speak out that you did and tell me what that was like.
Well, yeah, first I want to say that event that you're talking about, it was called the 5 Day Save, and
Hmm.
it was organized by Roxanne. Uh, and I've told her before, but it's worth saying again that that event had such a profound impact on me, and it's a huge inspiration behind the convergences that Animal Activism Collective does, because being being with people for 5 days and really getting to know them and fighting alongside them for the animals, that just made me feel like I've never felt before. It was super inspiring. And yeah, I was kind of a baby activist back then. And yeah, our mutual friend Shannon, she was at the 5 Day Save, and she is somebody that I looked up to when I was, a baby activist, and still look up to her. And she's the one who really encouraged me. She had the experience, and she was
Hmm.
giving speak outs, and other people were giving speak outs, and she was kind of like, "Hey, do you want to do one?" And I was like, maybe next time. I'd never held a megaphone before. I'd never given a speech like that before. And she's like, are you sure? She wasn't trying to pressure me, but she just kind of was trying to give me some encouragement. And so I did it. And I gave the speak out, and I put it online, and it got like tens of thousands of views or something like that. And it sort of just, you know, uh, made me realize even more how impactful an event like that is. And then, when we were first starting to do the convergences with Animal Activism Collective, I reflected on that and thought, wow, like I gained so much encouragement from that event, the way that other activists nurtured me, the way that I was able to build relationships with them and feel close with them, and all those things. And yeah, that's definitely the same kind of vibe we try to bring to the convergences. So yeah, that was super inspiring. And yeah, the speak out, it unlocked something in me that I didn't know that I had. And I'm very thankful to Shannon for giving me that encouragement, and all the activists that were there, and Roxanne for putting that event together. It was really a game changer for me.
So Shannon helped you find your voice. And what a powerful voice she unleashed, because I mean, now I've seen you doing these disruptions now, and man, like, so I know you as this sweet guy, this teddy bear type guy, but man, you become a demon on that bullhorn. When you speak for the animals, something comes out of you and you really unleash. And I've got some friends who sort of like behind the scenes, like not two people, we're sort of like, kind of critiquing like sort of disruptions and stuff and try to make ourselves better. And like sometimes people get on the microphone and kind of just not bring that energy. You are not one of those people. You bring a full frontal assault, basically. And it's really impressive to see. So, and it's funny, you mentioned like being a baby activist. Me too. Like during that event, like this was sort of like our coming of age.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny. So like Shannon's, sort of famous for being the mother of Evan, who I guess I don't know, at the time he was like 9, I don't know, 9, 10 years old or something.
Maybe even younger. Yeah.
Yeah, he might have even been younger. So
Yeah.
you and me as like new activists, we're there with this like little boy who's like kind of like a famous in activism circles.
Yeah.
So we're like, I was like awestruck to be around Vegan Evan, and shout out Vegan Evan, just an amazing activist.
Oh
And
yeah.
Shannon.
Vegan Evan's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, that whole crew we had, I mean, what a dream team that was. Well, let me say also, that was the first time I ever did a disruption, and it was with you. You and I and a couple others were just driving around. I think we hit up like a Waffle House or something, and I felt so awkward, Trey, but you did so well. I don't know if that was your first disruption, but you took to it really well. You remember?
I do remember that. My first disruption was in Florida. Shannon and some others are also the ones who kind of influenced me to do that. So it wasn't my first disruption, but it might have been like my first time speaking at a disruption or something. Yeah, I feel like there were a lot of firsts during that event, and yeah, like while now I feel like my activism's a little more directed. Those kinds of disruptions are really more kind of like outreach based, going in and giving a speech about animals and hoping that someone cares and will change. It wasn't necessarily like a campaign against Waffle House or wherever we were, but yeah. So now in my personal activism, I kind of try to move toward like campaigns. Like if I'm going to walk in and do a disruption, it's probably because some place is selling fur or selling foie gras or whatever the campaign is. So that's kind of one way that my activism has evolved. But doing those things really helped teach me and also help me gain that confidence and experience. So yeah, I'm like forever grateful for those experiences.
Yeah, and I noticed with AAC that with your mentorship program, that's sort of the kind of thing that you do, is like you sort of offer all the forms of activism. And I know you personally, I know that you believe in certain types of activism over others as being more effective. But you provide all the forms of activism for the mentees so that they can kind of find their path in activism and find their voice. It's great how you took that 5-day save and ran with it. Yeah, it was so impactful. It was also Shannon who um, encouraged me to speak. We were doing a disruption at a Walmart, protesting Fairlife Dairy, who had been just caught abusing calves, and workers like punching calves and stuff. Really horrible footage that was exposed. And yeah, and we were just doing this sort of demonstration. We had like kids like wearing like little cow things, like cow masks. And I was just that newbie activist, still nervous, hadn't found my voice. And Shannon just walked up, put the bullhorn right in my face, without, and that's the way to do it too, because like now you're in the moment, like you haven't even thought about it, and I just had to say something. Came out fine. Like, would I have said the exact same thing today? Probably not. I would have fine fine gone over it and made it a little better. But I'm really proud of that experience. And yeah, Shannon was just great at that. And so I'm glad you guys are doing that for people at AAC. And we should talk about your evolution too, like your evolution in thought over time. Because so when I met you, I would see you at Cubes, I'd see you doing all these things. And you were living out in a rural area, I believe. And so you were driving out to all these different places and putting a lot of time on the road. But tell me a little bit about that evolution where you sort of like changed to like really targeted pressure campaigns. And that's sort of been your focus lately.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was I saw what CAFT was doing, Coalition to Abolish the Fur Trade. I saw that this small group of people were making change, like significant change against big companies with pretty, simple tactics. The
Mm-hmm.
same tactics that I was already used to using, like speaking out and protesting and disruptions. But it was just in this targeted way that caused businesses like Saks Fifth Avenue to drop fur. I mean, a huge company that's been around for years and years and years. And it just sort of blew my mind. So, I really kind of wanted to be a part of that and emulate that. And AAC has worked with CAF very closely on some of these campaigns and provided our support. And some of our convergences have been, in support of those campaigns, the YSL campaign, the Mark Jacobs campaign, and others. And yeah, I mean, just seeing these results. And another part of it was for me personally that having conversation by conversation, trying to convince one person at a time to change their lifestyle was really like just kind of bad on my mental health. Like,
Mm,
when you talk to one person after another and like just sometimes nobody cares about the animals, or if they do care, they're not showing it, or they're not willing to change. It can be really frustrating. And sometimes pressure campaigns are frustrating too. We wish they would drop after day one, but sometimes it takes months, sometimes it takes years.
right.
But I don't know, it's better for me because I feel like I'm working towards something tangible. Now, that's not to discredit other kinds of activism. Like you said, at AAC, we really encourage all different kinds of activism. And I also think that what might be the best and most effective kind of activism for one person may not be the best and most effective activism for another person. It really depends on your personality type, your skill set, um, and all kinds of different factors. Maybe even like where you live is
Mm,
is a factor in what kind of activism that you're sustainably able to do. So that's part of what AAC does. We link people with experienced mentors, we link people who want to become active, or maybe they've been active in the past, but they've kind of fallen off, or maybe they've been active for a while, but they kind of feel like they're spinning their wheels or something like that. We link them with somebody who's got that experience, and that mentor can kind of assess like hey, you might really enjoy this, or you might really enjoy that, or, hey, maybe this is something you'd be great at or be really effective at. So yeah, I mean, there's a time and a place and a person for all different kinds of activism, and we really need all of it.
Mhm.
There's so many people who are in the movement doing pressure campaigns, but they would never be doing it if it hadn't been for someone who talked to them on the street, or some kind of video of a speak out they saw online, or because of undercover investigative footage that they saw of a factory farm. I mean,
Yeah.
there's just a place for all of it, and that's what we really encourage.
Yeah, yeah. I feel the same way. And yeah, it's interesting because a lot of the activism that is not necessarily a targeted campaign is sort of, I feel like, almost the entryway for people to get into those sort of pressure campaigns in some ways. Like I even know some people, I know you know this person, we won't name them, but I know someone who like changed their life based on reading a pamphlet. Like, and you think about like leafleting and stuff, like sometimes it feels like turning your wheels, but I know someone who's now a balls to the wall animal rights activist after reading a leaflet. Um, so yeah, but let's talk about the pressure campaigning because it's interesting. So if you're out there talking to somebody and trying to make them go vegan, one, like you don't know what they're going to do. You can't tell what they're going to do. They could even go vegan on the spot and you don't know if they're going to stay vegan or not. So yeah, it can just like be this thing that you can't see any results from. Uh, and also like you're also trying to like play this game where like I don't know if you feel this, but sometimes like I don't really care if somebody likes me necessarily walking away, but we know that it's somewhat important that we be liked. With a pressure campaign, and it's good for me. Like we don't need to be liked. We want them to want us to go away, which is great. So yeah, with pressure campaigns, like I think a lot of people kind of mistake the goals of the pressure campaign and they'll say like, oh, you're turning the public off or something like that. But that's not the goal, is it?
Yeah, I think it depends on the campaign and how it's being run, and what the strategy is. But yeah, with a lot of these campaigns that we're seeing with fur and foie gras, for example, I feel like those are some of the most prominent ones right now that people are really interested in and invested in. Yeah, I mean, the goal is not necessarily to gain favor with somebody, but a lot of these anti foie gras campaigns are being won simply through emails and correspondence.
Mhm.
Like a lot of the campaigns are being won. They email the restaurant and say, "Hey, I don't know if you knew." And it's important to give people this chance. Like it's important to educate them because before you just start, protesting, because you might have an opportunity for some kind of dialogue, and that's sort of where some of your outreach skills can come in, and it can kind of all work together. And you
Right.
can say, hey, this is what goes on in the foie gras industry. These ducks and geese are force fed with tubes rammed down their throat. Their livers grow up to 10 times their normal size. Here's some information. Here's some video footage. We're asking your restaurant to drop foie gras. And sometimes they email back and say, yeah, we didn't know that this was what went on. We're more than willing to drop this. And boom, there's a victory, and that's great. Sometimes it's not like that, as you can imagine. And,
Right.
at that point, you've sort of given the company their opportunity to be a hero. You've given them the opportunity to do their own research. And if they can't be reasoned with, at that point, you have to start showing up and protesting, or, whatever your tactics might be. And yeah, a lot of people look at the videos of those protests and say, like, hey, y'all look like a bunch of crazy animal rights activists, or, this isn't really shedding a great light on us or whatever. And the fact is, those activists don't really care about that. They care about getting the win for the animals. They care about liberation. They don't necessarily care about how they're seen. And that style or that strategy doesn't work with every kind of activism. But with pressure campaigns, that's sort of what it is. I mean, we don't really care if uh, the person walking by is sympathetic to us or not. We care that the company that's being protested does what we're asking them to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've seen you do this in your pressure campaigning, where I've seen you'll be on the bullhorn and you'll say, we told you about the cruelty. So you're also letting the staff know, the people in there know, we've tried. We've put out this outreach to you before. You ignored us or you rebuffed us. So here we are. Deal with us. And I'm just, yeah, like I love it. I love that you're I love that you're being strategic now, and kind of like, well, and answer me this: why fur, why foie gras? Since those are the two sort of main area focus of a lot of the pressure campaigning right now.
Yeah, I think these are two industries that the public are mostly against. It both, I think both items, if you want to call them that, really are for, you know, either rich people or people who want to pretend like they're rich, or pretend like they're better than other people, or, you know, there's kind of that stigma associated with those two products. They're both so-called luxury items, that most of the public are, you know, not, most of the public's not participating in that. And so when you go up and you ask somebody like, hey, will you stop eating chicken? Will you stop eating dairy? Like, obviously those things are just as bad, in many ways. But if a person that if you're asking a person to change their behavior, that's a little more difficult than like, hey, here's this thing you're already not doing. Would you be willing to stand up for that? Or would you be willing to be against that? Yeah, they would. I mean, a lot of people, and this goes for more than just fur and foie gras. It goes for, you know, animals used in circuses, or, you know, experiments on animals, glue traps. You know, these are kind of some low hanging fruit that, the public is generally, you know, against these kinds of abuses, and they don't participate in these kinds of abuses. So, and there's just a lot of momentum with both fur and foie gras. You know, last year, uh, there were a lot of fur victories. I can't even remember them all off the top of my
Mm-hmm.
head, but Marc Jacobs, who's arguably the most influential
Yeah.
designer, in the United States, and influential far beyond the United States. He used to be, with Louis Vuitton before he, you know, branched out and created his own brand. And, yeah, very influential designer, publicly went fur free, and even basically said in his public statement that it was because of activists. He called activists bullies. You know, he didn't like it, but, you know,
He
we
probably was
obviously,
thinking of you, Trey. He was probably.
well, you know, we've got to keep in mind who the real bullies are, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes, sometimes another thing that I want to kind of talk about is sometimes these activists, you know, activists are generally like kind-hearted people who really want to make a difference in the world. So sometimes they feel bad protesting. They're like, oh man, you know, the staff is not liking us, and, you know, they
Mm-hmm.
can't really make, you know, the staff might not be able to make a change, and, you know, I feel bad for protesting. And I'm like, you know, yeah, I mean, we're not against necessarily the staffs of these places, but this is what works, and it's been shown to work. So are you willing to trade, some staff, you know, like being uncomfortable for a while because of a protest, for the liberation of these animals, for, you know, this worldwide company to drop fur? You know, that's huge for the animals. And, you know, if we're not willing to be on board with that, or at least understand it, then we've got a long way to go.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think more and more people are starting to realize this, that it does work, and sometimes it is what we have to do. Protesting and pressure campaigns is often like a last resort. You know, you really want to try to work it out with the company and give them a chance to be ethical, and make a moral decision, but sometimes they don't. But yeah, foie gras, for the same reason as fur, like so many people are against it, and it also has a ton of momentum. Like, so many, I don't remember how many restaurants dropped foie gras last year. I mean, it's a lot.
Double
It's
digits for sure.
double digits.
Far
Yeah,
beyond, I think.
definitely. Maybe close to triple. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But it's a lot in cities all over the world. I know, like DC, Coalition Against Foie Gras, they got a ton of wins. Austin Animal Advocates, they got a ton of wins. And these small grassroots groups, Animal Activism Collective works with them and supports them however we can. It's as part of AAC's mission too, is to sort of like take all these people who are doing wonderful work and sort of figure out like, hey, how can we all kind of work together toward one goal? And there's so many people doing so many amazing things. I meet new people all the time, and they're all so inspiring. Like how dedicated people are and how smart they are in their campaigns and all these things. I learn from them all the time, and I'm so thankful for people doing this kind of work all over the place.
Yeah. And I'm grateful for Animal Activism Collective as being there for like guidance, resources for people. So like, I mean, just to give people an idea, like I've learned through, talking to you and going through some of these campaigns myself, just how much thought goes into them. Like for instance, just like planning, like who is it that is likely to change, like who are the first people that you can go and likely influence, that sort of thing. And then also just like logistics, and then getting down to like what constitutes a win. I mean, you and I have had discussions about that a lot, actually, like during one of my campaigns, where it was like, is this a win? I was asking you, like, what does this count? Like, you're asking, like, what is it? You've gotten an email, right? Somebody said, we're done. They didn't put it on their social media. Does that count? Is and part of the issue that you deal with organizing is that not everybody's going to be happy with the result. And you have to sort of decide, have we gotten enough from this group, from this restaurant or whatever it is, to move on to the next one? And so it's just a lot of calculation. And I really appreciate AAC being there, because, for most of the people I think that are going to undertake these types of campaigns, well, like hopefully they've done it before, but a lot of people haven't done it before. So it's like new territory. You've got all these questions, legal risk. You've got all these things that you need to like kind of work out. And I don't say that to like dissuade anybody, because I don't want to make it seem more complicated than it is, because sometimes it is just as simple as walking in the door. And
Or sending an email, and that's it
right,
sometimes.
right, right.
Yeah.
Sending an email or walking in the door. Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, like one of the reasons why we started doing stuff where I live was I was just having a meal with my buddies, and we were talking about this place that was selling fur, and they kind of shamed me a little bit, because they were like, we're sitting around here talking about it. Why don't you do something about it? And that, like, I internalized that so much, so that I walked into the store, took some photographs. Staff was like, what are you doing in here? Like, can you please leave? And then that was the tone. And then all of a sudden, we got this campaign going. And it was really helpful to have someone to sort of guide me through, because I didn't know what the hell I was doing, as you know. But I also just want to say, like, it can be that simple. And also, like,
Hold on, before we move on, you should mention that campaign was won, right? You won
yeah,
that
that
campaign.
campaign was successful.
Yeah, there you go. I just wanted you to give yourself some credit there.
Yeah, well, and you credit too. Like, there was, a string of wins that happened from that campaign. And, it ranged from, like me being in a store, or me with one other activist, right? Doing like a little disruption, to like, 10 people or so. And so we're talking small numbers of people. And that's why I like that you brought up that when you looked at what CAFT was doing, sometimes CAFT was getting these wins with just a handful of activists, but really, committed activists. And it empowers you, right? You realize we can change the world with just a few of us. Imagine if our numbers grew and grew and grew, but we don't have to even count on that. but that's what Animal Activism Collective is helping, is these numbers to grow, so that people can do this wherever they live. So if there's like a store selling fur near you, you can just, well, you can start with the emails, start with the phone calls, and if not, go take some photos or whatever, and go from there.
Yeah.
Because people will get fired up about it.
Yeah, and one thing I want to mention too, for anybody who's not familiar with pressure campaigns and they're, you know, thinking about starting one after watching this conversation, would be selecting the company that you want to go after and what your ask is. I think is also extremely important. It needs to be something realistic. For example, going just because fur is a low hanging fruit right now,
Mhm.
it might not be a great idea to go after a company that exclusively sells fur, because then you're basically having to ask them to just shut down their business, which they're not going to do willingly, right?
Right.
So yeah, it might be better to find a place like the one that Jeremy found, which was a place that sold all kinds of things, but they did have a little fur, but that little bit of fur was not worth enduring the protests and all of that. So that's, and same with foie gras. Most restaurants don't exclusively sell foie gras.
Right.
So if somebody sells foie gras, it's almost always a decent target. It might, some are be harder than others, and you might want to start out with what you think might be the easiest, build some momentum, get some victories, get some credibility, and then work your way up
Right.
to to whatever the final boss is, in your city. Maybe
Right.
there's a company that would be harder to go after than the others. But yeah, I mean, early on when I started with pressure campaigns, that was a mistake that I made, was going
Going
after a
big.
target. Yeah, going after a target that probably wasn't the best choice. Definitely wasn't the best choice. And so anybody who's getting excited about pressure campaigns right now, I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, and I remember you talking about that. I also wouldn't necessarily consider that a loss because it was informing you also. I mean, it was like it was part of the steps of like informing you how this gets done, how this works. And yeah, and but another thing I'll say is that I was surprised doing this. Like you said, like getting the wins does build this sense of momentum. And then there, like at least where I live, like there was a reputation that was starting to build around the town, which is not a very big place. And so then the emails were working because they knew what was happening. And I'll
It's
tell
like a
you, like
snowball. It's
a little
awesome.
snowball was happening, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden you got a handful of wins and people are feeling good and motivated. Yeah, like nothing kills motivation like taking an L, I'm
Yeah.
telling you. So getting those wins is like, just human nature. And I'll tell you too, like there are there were targets that I thought would be extremely difficult. Not being specific, but targets that I thought would have taken like a year or 2 years, something like that, that were solved with a phone call. And I credit part of that to the building momentum, but also just the uncertainty. You just never know. Um, I mean, just making a phone call, like, and I like that you mentioned, like, there are times when we feel bad about this, like the staff and everything. Well, there are good-hearted people sometimes on these staffs that want to do the right thing, and yeah, I feel that too. Like, I feel bad, um, making someone feel uncomfortable. I even remember one protest, at the end of it. Uh, One of the women in this particular place came out and said, "Thank you guys for being peaceful," and it just made me realize like she may have like even felt unsafe while we were there, that sort of thing. Um, so yeah, I feel I have compassion for these people, but again, like you said, does a little bit of like inconvenience outweigh the extreme brutality that the animals are suffering every day? Of course not.
No, something I like to say is that liberation is inconvenient. Somebody's going to be inconvenienced. We're inconvenienced because we have to do the work
Right.
to achieve this, right? I mean, the animals, in some instances, they can liberate themselves if they're able to escape from a factory farm or something like that. But in most situations, they really need our help.
Yeah.
We're their only hope, basically. So it inconveniences us because we have to dedicate our lives to this or dedicate our free time to this or whatever. But yeah, and sometimes it's gonna inconvenience people around us, and inconvenience is inconvenience. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that big of a deal, and it's not that big of a price to pay for the liberation of animals, for the downfall of an entire industry, which is, usually the goal, the ultimate goal of a pressure campaign. So it's great to sometimes reflect and put those things into perspective, for sure.
How do you deal with the pushback that I assume you might get from time to time when people say, like, if you're only going after fur or foie gras, and you're not really working for animal liberation because they're selling leather, they're selling wool or whatever?
Sure. Yeah, I actually have an entire workshop on this on Animal Activism Collective's channel on YouTube. If anybody wants to check it out, I did it, I think, a couple of years ago. It's called Pressure Campaigns. Are they speciesist? Do they work? And I would encourage anybody to watch that. But yeah, I mean, I kind of put it in the perspective of we're all just trying to do what we can for animals. One point I would say is, if we can't take down the most fragile animal exploiting industries that exist, like fur and foie gras, then how in the world are we going to be able to take down big meat or, something like that, or the fishing industry? It's not going to happen. We have to build these blueprints for the larger, situation. And to be honest, it's going to be a long time probably before we are able to achieve liberation on that kind of scale. So let's think about what we can do in our lifetime. Sure, it's, do I care about chickens just as much as I care about foxes and minks in the fur industry, and just about the ducks and the geese in the foie gras industry? Of course I do. There's no difference in those souls and in those beings. That they all matter equally. But the kind of metaphor I use or analogy, or however you want to put it, that I use in that workshop is, if just think about this: if there was a safe that you didn't know the combination to, and it's almost impossible to get into, that had 50 animals in it, let's say, but there was a cage right beside it that had one animal in it that didn't have a lock on it. All you had to do was open the cage up. Is it speciesist to open that cage up and let them out, even though you're not able to let the other ones out? I don't think so. I think, yeah, let them out. Like, keep chipping away at the cage or the safe that's harder to open. But in the time being, like, here you go. Like, this is very achievable. Let's open this cage. Like, is it speciesist to make that one animal in that cage wait? So, that's something you can kind of think of. Also, do you have a dog at home? Are you a speciesist because you have a dog and not a cat, or a cat and not a dog, or you have a dog but you don't have a pig? No, it's the situation that you were in. Maybe you came across that dog and that's just how it worked out. Or, maybe your area, you're not zoned to be able to have like a farmed animal, right? Maybe you are capable of taking care of a cat, but are not capable of taking care of a dog. I mean, is that speciesist? I think all of it is kind of ridiculous if you really follow it to its logical conclusion. I mean, ultimately, we're just doing what we feel is most strategic when it comes to pressure campaigns. Are these other animals just as valuable? Yeah, of course they are. And I understand, I understand why it would feel maybe like you're leaving some of the animals behind or something. Like if you're going after a company that sells both fur and exotic skins, for example. Yeah, I mean, these animals in the exotic skin industry, I mean, they suffer horrifically. But fur is just going to be easier to get rid of than exotic skins right now, and that's just how it is. And it's unfortunate. I want to get to exotic skins eventually. I want to get to every wool and leather and all this stuff. But I mean, leather right now, I don't think you're going to be able to convince too many companies to get rid of leather. I just don't.
Yeah.
So it's just about the strategy, and I don't think it has anything to do with speciesism. And I also think that we'll be able to get to these other industries that people care so much about more quickly if we, just go in order, basically go in order of, what's achievable. That's really
Hmm.
what it comes down to.
I'm really glad you brought up that workshop you did because that stayed with me after I watched it. I really love the analogy you gave, and you just sort of did it just now. But during your talk, you were sort of like equating, like, you've got like a box or something that you can open right now. You've got like a maximum security prison over here. Is it wrong to talk? To open this box here? Yeah, that was a great workshop, and that reminds me of how many great workshop videos AAC has done over the years that are really helpful to activists. Like, one, I think so many activists, when they think about this type of campaigning, their first thoughts are law enforcement, that sort of thing. And you've got great talks about that, how to protect yourself, what your risk level is, how you can minimize your risk. Um, and yeah, those were invaluable. So I'm really glad that you did them. And I think there are tools that not a ton of activists are aware are out there. And so I'm glad we're making it a little more aware that they can find that. Um,
Yeah, and I want to mention real quick that there's workshops on all kinds of stuff. Like if you're not super into the pressure campaign thing, we, like I said, AAC promotes and encourages all different kinds of activism. So yeah, there's workshops on outreach techniques, and there's workshops on not burning out. There's workshops on minimizing infighting in your community. There's workshops on pressure campaigns, on dealing with the police, on all kinds of stuff. I mean, there are so many workshops. I want to give a shout out to Michelle. Within AAC, we call her the workshop queen because she's always organizing all kinds of amazing workshops and getting some really incredible guests on
yeah,
that are able to impart their wisdom. So
yeah.
yeah, I definitely would highly encourage checking out the live streams on Animal Activism Collective's YouTube.
That's one of the things I really appreciate is just like kind of the thoughtful approach. I know you're someone who's like been doing your homework over the years. I see the bookshelf behind you. I had mentioned before we even did the interview, I think of some books and stuff, like some book recommendations. But I just want to say, like, I really appreciate that, at least from my vantage point. It seems like you've done homework. You've read about some of this stuff. You're putting thought into your activism because you want to get the most bang for your buck, of course. Like you said, you were turning your wheels for so long, just talking to person by person, trying to get them to turn vegan. Um, and I should mention, you're good at that. Like I've seen you do it. You're good at all these different types of outreach as well. So you're good at, having the one-on-one conversations. Obviously, you're very personable too. Also, switching gears a little bit, when you had mentioned these animals are also different souls, it reminded me that you're a Christian. And that is also something that, so I'm not a Christian. And so when I'm talking to somebody, like now we're sort of on outreach, but when I'm talking to someone who's, got like an argument based on the Bible or something, I'm not as equipped to handle that sort of thing. But tell me a little bit about how your faith informs how you feel about animals and activism and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I became a Christian before I became vegan. So yeah, I think it kind of interweaves a lot. I mean, we've actually had some workshops on this subject through AAC as well, not only with just Christianity, but some other religions too. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think if you, it's interesting because the last several years I've kind of been on a journey of reading the canonized Bible all the way through from Genesis to Revelation. And yeah, I mean, reading it through a vegan animal rights lens with all the information that I know now is quite different.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, I mean, a lot of vegans will argue like, yeah, there's a lot of animal abuse in the Bible. And yeah, there is. I mean, there was animal sacrifice and all those things, but Christians believe in Jesus and Jesus's sacrifice for humankind, and when Jesus came, that kind of got rid of the need to sacrifice animals. And yeah, I think there's a lot to mention. I hope people will just like dig more into this on their own through those workshops. You can probably find it somewhere. I also did a panel on my own talking to some vegan Christians. I would encourage people to check out Matthew A. King, the Christian Animal Rights Association, also Creation Care Church with Craig Wesco. Those are some people that I look to a lot, and listen to their talks regularly. And I'm always learning something new about how the Bible and Christianity kind of intertwine. But ultimately, to put it simply, you know what? You were talking about Case Farms and us doing a vigil there. I'll say to everybody kind of what I said to this guy that was there once. We were doing a vigil there and a long time ago, and this guy kept driving by and he was like, why don't y'all protest for something else? Or like, why are y'all doing this? Blah, blah. And we kind of started to feel unsafe a little bit because he kept circling around and just yelling at us as he would drive by. So then we started to walk to our car, and I was kind of thinking like, this guy's probably going to follow us to our cars. And he did. And he drove up, and, he just started yelling at us some more. And I was like, I think I saw that he was wearing a cross or something like that, and assumed he was Christian for some reason, or maybe he said it. I can't really remember. But I said, look, man, or maybe he made the argument that God put animals here for us to eat or something like that. And I said, look, man, I pointed at the slaughterhouse. I said, if Jesus were to come back in human form today, could you hold his hand and guide him up there to that slaughterhouse and show him what's inside and be proud of participating in this and funding it? Would you be proud to show him that, or would you be embarrassed? And he like looked off into space for a minute. It looked like he'd seen a ghost. It's like he had an epiphany. And he quit all the yelling, and he literally just stuck his hand out and shook my hand. He said, "Thank you, brother." Like that.
Whoa.
Yeah, it blew my mind. And yeah, I mean, you don't have to be an expert on the Bible to think like, would a loving God want us to unnecessarily abuse these creatures? I mean, he breathed life into these creatures. He made a covenant with these creatures, and these covenants are mentioned in the Bible. And if they weren't worth anything, why would he mention it? Why is the same Hebrew word that's used for when he breathed life into humans used for when he breathed life into the animals? Why did he give them, eyes to see, and why did he give them lungs to breathe? Why did he give them a brain to think? If he wanted them to suffer unnecessarily, he's God. He already did that with plants. I mean, it's like magic. I mean, it's science, but you know what I mean? Like it's magic.
Magical. Yeah.
It's magical. You put a seed into the ground and water it, and it grows, and you eat it, and you get nourishment from it. I mean, it's like, if
it's miraculous. It is like a miracle. Yeah.
It's miraculous. I remember when I was a kid watching that movie, The Big Rock Candy Mountains, and it seemed magical because somebody would pick like a sucker off of a tree, and the sucker would regrow instantly. I mean, that's really only like an exaggeration of what actually is, which is, trees and plants and everything that grows out of the ground to provide us nourishment, and we can survive and thrive off of that. So why would God want us to slit an animal's throat? And he teaches us to be merciful too. And it's merciless to take an animal's life if there's no need.
Well, thanks for sharing the Case Farm story, because I hadn't heard that before. I must not have been there, or at least maybe if I was, I'd already left or something. Because because the way you put that is so powerful. I think we just found the clip to promote this show, I think, there. You know, that's just really beautiful way of stating it. Could you walk Jesus, you know, up that hill, you know, and, you know, case forms, you kind of go uphill a little bit to get there. Yeah. And so people, like, if people aren't, Case Farms is a chicken slaughterhouse in North Carolina. And we've done a number of demonstrations there. And sort of the enduring memory that I have of Case Farms is like seeing like feathers on the ground. You'll see these like little white feathers, and it almost looks like snow.
Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah, it's a sad place. It's also a place where there's like a little convenience store across the street that the workers all go in, and they'll walk out of the slaughterhouse on their break. They've still got their boots on, and you can see that their boots have been hosed down, and you know they're just standing around in blood, and it's just horrific. But horrible place. But it's interesting now that we're talking about the spirituality. Actually, I remember that 5-day save. I believe the first event of the 5-day save was you and I were there, and we saw Thomas Wade Jackson's documentary, Prayer for Compassion. And that guy, really sweet guy, we got to meet him. Remember, he had that beard, and he was giving us beard envy.
I do remember. I've talked to him. I've talked to him since then. Yeah, he's great.
He's a really nice guy. Check out that film if you haven't seen it, guys. It's I think it's on Amazon Prime or something.
A Prayer for Compassion.
Yeah. By the way, my beard, I had to, you know, I have to, you know, shave every now and then because it gets long, and then I can't do it right. And so then I just take it all off. But now I'm in like this weird limbo phase. I got to get it back down.
I was just talking to some friends about this yesterday. I haven't shaved in so long. I'm like, I don't even know what's under here. I'm kind of afraid to find out. So I guess I'll just keep rocking the beard.
I know. Well, I thought, you know, I thought, you know, when I went vegan, I was like, well, you know, I was reading all this stuff about how good it is for you. I'm like, well, I'm gonna look so chiseled when I take this beard off. And I took it off. I was like, oh, let's grow that back.
Oh my goodness. Hey, I wanted to mention, yeah, you were talking about that part of the 5-day save where we actually watched that. I believe it was actually inside of a church that we watched that film in, which was interesting. And yeah, I remember meeting Debbie Davis, and she was like one of the first other vegan Christians that I met. So that was just another part of the 5-day save that really, was great for me, because I was like, do vegan Christians even exist? And they very much do. And we lost Debbie last year. She passed away. But she was with Blueberry Lane Sanctuary, and they are continuing that. And there's so many animals that live there that have been impacted by Debbie. I've worked with her to get some animals there. There were some goats that were in Florida that I kind of coordinated with her to help them get there. And I miss Debbie. I just wanted to mention her, and I hope people will check out Blueberry Lane. It's a great sanctuary.
Blueberry Lane, yeah. That's sad to hear. I didn't meet Debbie, or at least I don't remember her, so I'm sad to hear that. Doesn't surprise me, actually, that, you know, you found some Christians that were sort of in the sanctuary world, you know, because like, you know, we know several sanctuary owners who were basically like, they were cattle ranchers, and then they decided, I can't do this anymore, and turn their cattle ranches into sanctuaries. And I think a lot of those people, you know, they come from Christian backgrounds and Christian faiths. So I have a few people that I'm thinking of specifically, but yeah, that's really sad. But Christianity has really become kind of hot in the animal rights world, with like Christspiracy coming out last year, and I think it was last year. And yeah, I also was watching our mutual friend. I know Natalie is a mentor, Natalie Fulton, with AAC, and she turned me on in one of her recent videos to this book called Vegan versus the Verses.
Yeah, I have that book. Yeah, I've read it.
Yeah, it's cool. It's like this activist out in Las Vegas who's a Christian, and he's written a book. Like, if you're interested in how to like sort of debate or argue veganism, animal rights from a Christian perspective. That's a good book to read. And I think
Yeah.
he really kind of wrote it for the non-Christian almost. Someone like
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. Stephen Lee August. Yeah. You can read that from, yeah, I think several different perspectives. Like if you're, yeah, if you're somebody who is not Christian, but maybe you've got Christian family or Christian friends, and you kind of want to be able to talk with them about that stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's a great book. And if you're a Christian, I mean, yeah, it's really great to know a lot of that stuff and how you can kind of defend veganism to your fellow Christians who
Mhm.
may not be vegan. I think everyone should be vegan, but definitely Christians. I think Christians should be vegan. But yeah, it's a great book. I would recommend it.
Well, I don't mean to focus so much on your personal faith and stuff, but I'm interested because it is so personal that you had mentioned you were a Christian before you were vegan, and that you've been reading the Bible like cover to cover, basically. And so you're reading it through a different lens now. So would you say that your faith has been strengthened, or has it changed, now that you're an animal rights activist?
Yeah, I think so. I think things are clearer now. They make a lot more sense. I know reading through some of the Old Testament, there's a lot of animal abuse mentioned, and that can be kind of brutal to read. It's sad. Um, and I mean, I don't want to get too deep into what I think about that because I'd be talking about it for a while. But
Right,
but
right.
uh but yeah, I mean, ultimately, yeah, I think it's strengthened my belief in God, and yeah, I think God, like put me on this earth partially to uh, defend His creatures and to make a difference for them, and yeah, I really feel like that's kind of what I'm called to do, and
Hmm.
a big part of my life's purpose, and yeah, it's been good for me, totally.
Yeah, very clearly. I'm talking a lot about that 5 day stay, but that's the time when we spent a lot of time together. And
Yeah, it was
I have
very very formative.
it was, and I have this very clear memory. And I've brought this up before. I haven't used your name when I've brought it up, but we were at a pig vigil.
Mhm.
And I've brought this up in the context of wondering why I wasn't like, why I felt like I wasn't feeling this in the same way as other people. But I have a clear memory of you in tears with the pigs. We were watching the trucks roll in, and I had that thought when I was witnessing you. It was like, you're this big guy, big tough guy. You're a big teddy bear. We've said that, but you really were feeling that moment. I was wondering why I wasn't like. I think for me it was like I know they're there whether I'm here or not. So the whole thing is sad, but it didn't hit me in that way. But do you remember that? And can you tell me what was sort of like going through, like kind of the emotions during that moment? I'm sure it's not like the only time, but maybe you can remember that. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, first I want to say, from what you said, that people, obviously process things in different ways. And that, if somebody listening here does go to a vigil and, maybe they're not crying and somebody else is, there's no shame in that or anything.
Hmm.
That we all have our own like defense mechanisms and all of that stuff. So, everybody processes things differently. So I just wanted to acknowledge that's totally okay.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, like, yeah, I mean, I think I've always been kind of an emotional person, like a heart on my sleeve type of
Hmm.
person. Yeah, I've just kind of always been like that, a sensitive person. So yeah, I mean, just seeing that firsthand was brutal. I can't remember if this was the exact day that we were together because I went there several times, but there was this one time in particular, and the first vigil I ever went to was there, by the way. It wasn't.
Mm.
It was before the 5 day save, but it was the first one that I went to. But the
Well,
5 day
so
save
this is at Tar Heel.
at Tar Heel, yeah, in Tar
Yeah,
Heel,
the
North Carolina.
largest. at one point the largest slaughterhouse in the world, I
At
think.
that time, it was the largest in the world. I think there's one in China now that's bigger.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was the largest in the world at the time. And yeah, but I do. Yeah, I think it was the time that I was with you. But this pig uh, just came up to one of the slits in the truck there, and she just like put her nose through, and I just like rubbed her nose, and just for a moment, it was like she was my dog or
Mm,
something. Like in another life, this would be maybe we'd have that kind of connection or something, but in another existence. But unfortunately, in this existence, me petting her and looking into her eyes was cut short by the truck driving away and driving her to a slaughterhouse where she'd be lowered into a gas chamber and suffocate and die. And
yeah.
Uh, I mean, we know these things happen as activists. Like we know that, and many people who are not activists or not vegans know this as well. But we put up those defense mechanisms, especially
Yeah.
when we're not vegan yet. We try at that stage, we try to justify it. And as activists, I mean, we can't spend our lives sitting in that moment and being sad all the time, or we'd never get anything done or have any kind of happiness in our time off or while we're working or whatever.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I don't always allow those feelings to come in, because if I did, I wouldn't be very effective. But in that moment, I did, because I was confronted with the situation
Yeah.
face to
With
face.
someone face to face to you.
Yeah, and I think also, like, sometimes all of the animal suffering in the world that happens every second of every day. I mean, who knows how many animals have been killed just since we've been having this conversation.
Right.
The enormity of it is really like unfathomable. You can't really process it. You can't really ever process the amount of suffering that is happening. But sometimes it just takes like that one-on-one connection. Like this one individual, like I made that connection with this one individual, and yeah, it was just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It was awful. Yeah.
Well, and I like that you bring it back to this one particular animal, because yeah, like you said, it's unfathomable the numbers, but when you kind of see it face to face, and I bet you, I mean, you obviously have remembered it, and it's been 5 or 6 years since that happened. Um, so you can think back to that one animal for drive, or whenever you're feeling like, it seems too difficult, you can think of that one, and almost spiritually, even thinking just like how vast our cosmos is, our universe, and yet here you were, same place and time as this one little individual who, and it's just amazing that you guys had that moment and you touched. Um, and yeah, they were going off to this horrible thing that may have been, we say this a lot, we don't know every moment of the animal's life, but that's very likely the only kindness that animal received in their life. Um, and probably the last, I mean, almost certainly the last bit of kindness they received. So, yeah, just an amazing, powerful moment that also speaks to the power of vigils, and like sort of getting around animals to sort of remind us who we're doing this for, because you can almost lose the sense of it. I even said to one of our mutual friends during one of these campaigns, I'm almost ashamed of saying this, but it was true, that like I had become so wrapped up in the campaign that I had forgotten to take some more time to think of the animals that we're doing this for. Like I feel like we need to do that sometimes. Just remember, who's in those cages. Yeah. But yeah, that's really powerful. And during that same time frame, we also saw that dead box where we found a mother,
Yes.
which was horrific. And I
I just
believe,
got cold chills when you mentioned that. That was
yeah, that was
horrible.
powerful. I'm gonna sound like a cop when I ask you this, like identifying, but didn't you get that number tattooed on you?
No, no, I used
Oh,
to
you didn't?
wear. No, I didn't. I used to wear a necklace all the time that had that number on. I still have it somewhere. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, we're referring to the ear tag of that we saw of this mother who and her babies were just tossed in the dumpster. Um, and she had the number, and it was a bunch of activists. We were filming, and a lot of people remember to sort of note the number, say like I forget what the number was, but 2068 whatever, we will never forget you, that sort of thing. And yeah, so you wore that necklace. So yeah, that was a powerful moment for all of us too. Probably my first time witnessing something that horrific in the flesh, right in front of me like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Um
That I think
so
that's definitely the first time I'd ever seen anything like that in person too. And honestly, like the vigil was affected me more because it hadn't happened to them yet, and I knew they still had.
mm,
I knew they were yet to be killed. I mean, but obviously it's still like very sad. Like, I mean, literally this mother and like a number that we weren't even able to count of her babies in a dumpster. I mean, just it was just a surreal um it was just a horrific reality of
right.
how animals are viewed in our society. They're literally viewed like trash. They were in a dumpster.
Yeah.
It's
And
awful.
that's not isolated. I
No.
mean, as you and I know and have come to learn, that that's a very common occurrence. I think even the activists who showed us that had some sense that they would find that and knew
Yeah.
exactly where to go. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's just really horrible. So we're talking about Eastern North Carolina right now, and that's where a huge bit of the hog industry is out there. And I really recommend people also, if they haven't seen to watch the Smell of Money documentary as well. I think you can also get that on, I don't know, wherever you find videos, but that was about the Eastern North Carolina hog farms and sort of the battle that they had with some of the residents there over spraying feces, literal feces into their yards. And they were coming down with all these health issues. And it's really tragic story because they had these battles with the hog farms, and some of the people that were featured in the film have since passed away from those health issues, and really sad.
Horrible. And you know, a lot of times when you're out protesting or advocating for animals, people will say, well, what about humans? All of this is interconnected, right? I
Hmm.
mean, like how we treat animals affects how we treat humans. And that story, I haven't seen that documentary, but I've seen videos online. I know What the Health mentioned
Yeah.
probably some of those same folks or people from that same community.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, it's sad. I this one story sticks with me from being a Christian. And like, I didn't become Christian till later in life, but I did grow up in the church. And
Hmm.
uh, yeah, this one guy, like got dressed up in his Sunday best and walked outside to go to church, and just turned around and went right back inside because they were spraying that day, and he was too embarrassed to walk into church smelling like that. And yeah, that just got to me. I mean, that to think about not even being able to walk outside without having feces, without having to worry about health concerns and how you smell and what you're
Right.
breathing in. I mean, it's just a hell on earth for them. It's actually, I mean, it's horrible.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so they couldn't do things that they would probably like to do, like sit on their porch or have family over, have a picnic, or
On
do
their own
whatever.
property that
Yeah, on their
that
own
they
home.
earned and paid for. Yeah, it's awful.
Right. And so they had to make the decision, do I stay in this hell and fight, or do I pick up and leave? And they chose to
It
fight.
Yeah, if you can even afford to leave in that situation, because
Right.
a lot of these factory farms, they're affecting like low income communities, so some of them can't even afford to fight or leave.
Yeah. And they're strategically placed, I believe, for
Yeah,
for those
definitely.
reasons. Yeah. Oh my God. but so you think about these things, and that's why, and then getting back to Animal Activism Collective and CAFT and the Duck Alliance, you know, and all these groups that are like working on these wins, getting wins, gives you some more hope, you know, like you get the tangible wins that, you know, activists can point to. So what's the current campaign? I know, like, I think the overall we're the overall goal is Louis Vuitton, but we know that that could take some time. Is that correct?
Yeah, Animal Activism Collective is supporting CAFT in whatever way we can in their campaigns. The final boss, I guess you'd say, is LVMH. Right now, CAFT is going after Berluti, which is an LVMH company, and some others are going after like Loro Piana and some others, but the main focus is Berluti. And then they're also going after Vogue magazine, urging them to stop promoting fur on their website and in the pages of their magazine. That's been an interesting campaign because, Vogue is owned by a company called Condé Nast. And Roger Lynch is the CEO of Condé Nast. And he's also involved with some other companies like Mattel, who makes toys like, you know, Barbie and American
Right.
Girl doll and, you know, all that, and also Sally Beauty. So there's been like fur protests at American Girl doll and at Sally Beauty, which, you know, a lot of people might not understand, but it's because they're associated with this guy who is very rich and powerful and puts fur on the pages of a well-known publication. So that's been an interesting campaign that, you know, AAC is happy to endorse and support. And then with foie gras, the Duck Alliance, AAC has worked with the Duck Alliance to launch a campaign urging Omni Hotels to drop foie gras. Omni Hotels has like 50 plus locations throughout North America. And yeah, I mean, we've seen like, I don't know, I think we're at around like 80 protests that people,
Yeah.
it just started in October, I think. And there's already been like 80 protests, which is insane. There's a lot of momentum behind this campaign. Omni is a very big, rich and powerful company. But yeah, the Duck Alliance folks, they're not backing down until Omni drops foie gras, and they really only sell a little bit. Last time we checked, there were only 2 of the 50 plus locations that serve foie gras, so it would not be a big deal for them to drop it. And, you know, we hope they
Yeah.
do the right thing and drop it. But we've also been supporting the Duck Alliance and all of these grassroots groups that are all over the country. I'm thinking like DC Coalition Against Foie Gras, Charlotte Coalition Against Foie Gras, Duck Alliance Arizona, Duck Alliance Denver, Austin Animal Advocates, SoFlo Animal Rights, all these incredible. There's a group in New Orleans that's like unnamed. They're awesome. I mean, like, there's too many to mention that are absolutely amazing. But yeah, we've been working with them on their local campaigns, and also working with Revolution Philadelphia on their local campaign against the Rittenhouse to get them to drop foie gras. So yeah, it's a lot. And but, you know, it's kind of great with the foie gras stuff because almost every major city has an Omni hotel, and they can do that. The cities that don't have an Omni, they can do their local campaigns, and the cities that do have an Omni can also work on these local campaigns as well. And they can kind of, you know, these campaigns can kind of work in tandem together. And where AAC comes into it is, you know, we're like posting on behalf of all these campaigns so that people can get involved from afar. And what you were talking about, I wanted to mention this before, but we didn't get a chance to. But when you were talking about your campaign in Asheville and how like a reputation had started brewing, that's kind of what's going on with the Duck Alliance. So the Duck Alliance is sort of like a formalization of, all these different grassroots groups. And what it's doing is helping to establish a reputation. What activists do in Florida is helping the reputation, helping get a win with just an email with the activists in Denver, or
Right.
just as an example. But yeah, I mean, and that's great how we can all kind of work together as a collective, yeah,
Exactly. Yep.
to build this reputation and to help get wins for animals. And we're so proud at AAC of all the partnerships we have with all these incredible groups that are doing their own amazing work.
Yeah, which is a recent name change. I know you guys rebranded as Animal Activism Collective. I think that does better sort of encompass all the work that you guys are doing, because you aren't just a mentorship program, although that is a big part of it. I assume that continues, right? Is it there's still a mentorship going on? Okay.
Yes, Animal Activism Mentorship still exists, but now it's just the name of our program, our mentorship program, and it's under the umbrella of Animal Activism Collective. We will always do the mentorship program for as long as we possibly can, as long as people need to be mentored, and as long as we are able to run it, we will do it, because it's so important. It's something that I wish that I had when I was brand new, before I launched a campaign that was kind of silly and wouldn't ever win. I wish I had somebody that I could go to. But like you were saying before, I kind of live in somewhat of a rural area. There's not a ton of activists around me where I live here, and I didn't really have anybody to lean on for that sort of stuff in the early days of being a vegan and being an animal rights activist. So we kind of thought, like, what would we have benefited from when we were brand new? And all that kind of was launched during COVID, when we were all sitting at home and thought, what can we still do? What can we do that's effective from home? And we thought mentor people. And now that's turned into, these convergences where people with less experience get experience hands-on with a mentor right there to catch them if they fall. And and the convergences have been great. Like, so many people have been inspired and gone on to create their own campaigns. I know, like, after the New York convergence, Mark Jacobs actually dropped fur during the New York convergence that was, targeting Mark Jacobs to drop fur. And we saw so many people like creating their own local groups because of the inspiration that they found out of that event. And one group I want to shout out in particular is Gainesville Animal Defenders in Gainesville, Florida. They started going after foie gras in their hometown, and they got several wins off the bat. And one of them was absolutely crazy. Like the I don't know if you saw the video.
I did.
Oh my goodness. Like the owners of the restaurant came out with their own megaphones and their own air horns and stuff like that. And
great content.
We're assaulting activists and all this crazy stuff. That was just wild. And then they dropped foie gras right after that, because they knew they couldn't keep that up. But
right.
yeah, it was absolutely insane. But they didn't waver. They, like, they stood strong and they got the win. It's so inspiring to see that, like, all over the country and all over the world, these little, just like, it only takes one or two people to start these little groups, and then it builds momentum, and people in their communities that have never come out before are getting victories. And then, like, Duck Defenders of Minnesota. Have you ever heard of Egan, Minnesota? I never even heard of that town. And they're protesting the Omni Hotel in that town, doing disruptions. Like, people I've seen on video, animal rights is a pretty small community, but, like, there's people in these videos. I'm like, I don't even know who these people are.
Right.
I'm like, wow, they're just putting it on the line and trying to get these wins for the animals and doing such incredible work that I'm so inspired by. Yeah, it's so great.
Well, we've got a mutual friend who I won't name that I see fairly regularly, and we were talking. I think it might have been like just post COVID, and they said to me that they think, like, AAM at the time had kind of saved the movement a little bit. And I kind of agree. I mean, obviously it would have continued on, but you guys really filled a void and kept things going. And I wasn't even necessarily even associating it with COVID, but there was all this stuff in the movement at the time, all this drama. There was stuff going on where groups were ending or stalling or whatever. And AAC was holding it together. I've said this, Trey, I just want to make this clear. Trey did not ask me to do this, but I think like if people are like, I know you had a recent fundraising campaign at the end of the year. I really think that if you're looking for groups to support where you're going to get a lot of bang for your buck, a group like Animal Activism Collective would be a great one to donate to if you have some money lying around. And we're all poor activists, okay? So I'm not saying you got to do it, but I think that's one of the groups that I would support because you and CAFT, the results speak for themselves. You're getting the wins. So, and I know you must be doing this on a threadbare budget with, you know, like a bunch of people donating a lot of their time. I know you're a videographer, you do all this kinds of work. I don't know if you've been able to become full-time activist or if you do this in addition to your day job, which is another thing that a lot of activists have to do. They have to work and, you know, so, but yeah, I would really encourage people to donate to AAC and support the work because I think it will pay off. Yeah. So
Thanks for saying that. I do want to say I don't think we saved the animal rights movement. I think the animal rights movement will always be here. There's so many like incredible, you know, sanctuaries and grassroots groups and bigger groups that are doing a lot of great work. But I do think what you said about filling a void, I do think that's something that we did. And, you know, because there's other organizations that like have some workshops and teaching and stuff like that, but not quite the one-on-one mentorship that we provide. And we have like we frequently have these big events, these convergences where people are able to like come together for the animals, and it's not something that just happens once a year. It happens all the time, like several times a year, and it's been great. And I think a lot of our success has been because of the mentorship program and also these in-person events where people get this hands-on experience and really get inspired, in addition to the other great things we do, like the workshops and the podcast that we have, the Animal Liberation Hour, and all the stuff. There's so many people doing great work within AAC.
Yeah, and I should say, you know, of course, we were kind of speaking hyperbolically, or my friend was. You know, like I just want to say, I'm also not just trying to denigrate all the other.
No, I knew you weren't, but I just wanted to.
I think it's important for me to say because one of the other groups I think that's really been holding it together is DXC, and that's the group that I have more involvement with. So I should clarify to anybody listening from DXC, you guys are holding it down too, and also deserving of donations and all that stuff too. But yeah, it's almost like I described this to some friends the other day. I feel like it's almost like there's a huge like DXC presence out in the West, and then in the East, it seems almost like it's AAC and CAFT. And I know it's not as simple as that, but it almost seems like there's like that East-West to me. But yeah,
AAC has roots on the East Coast, but yeah, now we're like in, you know, Indonesia and Africa and, you know, I mean, all kinds of places. So yeah, it's been great.
Yeah. Well, it's going to sound like I'm wrapping the interview. I'm not, but I think it would be good for people to know, like, if they want to help beyond like donating, in terms of like following, what are some things that they can follow? Like, I guess, Instagram, that kind of stuff. And also like, what are some actions that they can do to support these campaigns?
Yeah. I definitely recommend following Animal Activism Collective on whatever social media you have. We have an Instagram, we have a TikTok, we have a Facebook, we have a YouTube, we have a Blue Sky, we have a Mastodon. accounts. The Blue Sky and Mastodon, we're still kind of trying to figure out a little bit, but yeah, give us a follow over there while we figure it out. But
I hopped on that Blue Sky. Yeah, I had to get off Twitter, so yeah. And I saw you guys on there.
Yeah. So, but yeah, our Instagram definitely always has these calls to action on there that you can do from home. Sometimes it's sending an email or signing a petition, or calling a restaurant to get them to drop foie gras, or calling a company to get them to drop fur. Or we recently just had somebody contact us kind of spur of the moment and said, like they were anonymous and they worked at this restaurant that was using glue traps, and they were like, hey, they were kind of like a whistleblower, I guess. And they came to us and said, hey, this company is using glue traps. Like, can you do something? And like that day we put out a call storm or an email storm or something. And later that day, that company was like, yeah, we'll stop using the glue traps. We've already like contacted our pest control people,
Like
we're not just like that. So it doesn't always work out that way, but
doesn't, but sometimes it does.
Sometimes it does. And
I mean,
yeah. So if you want to be a part of some wins, it's great to protest. I would encourage people to do that. It's great to, get involved in the street and stuff like that. But if you're not able to, for whatever reason, or maybe you're mostly dedicated to some other form of activism and not really pressure campaigns, but you've got, 20 minutes to make a couple phone calls or something like that, or 10 minutes to make a phone call. Yeah. I mean, we've got these calls to action that we post on our Instagram all the time. And on our Facebook, you can keep up with all of our like in-person events and our workshops. We post like Facebook event, events on there. And yeah, we've been live streaming on our YouTube channel with these guests who, by the time you see this, our Know Your Rights training with Chris Caraway will be out.
Chris,
and Chris is an amazing animal rights attorney. And
by the way,
people are able to come on and ask questions and things like that. So we've got a lot of great stuff going on.
Yeah, and speaking of Chris, I believe he was involved in. I know he was at Ridgeland, but this news just broke like about an hour before we started to do this interview, that Ridgeland, a judge in Wisconsin, has approved a special prosecutor to investigate Ridgeland Farms, and Chris Caraway had some to do with that. I know he was one of the attorneys representing, I believe, Eva Hamer in the Ridgeland case. I'm not sure if he was part of the team to work on the special prosecutor, but I know that University of Denver was, because Stefan Seitz was one of the people who argued for it. Stefan's also this brilliant lawyer, but Chris, just an amazing lawyer.
He's a legend.
Just a legend. So check out that talk on the AAC about with Chris. That's awesome. And so I'd really encourage people to attend these sort of these mentorship programs that AAC puts on and become one, because it'll give you that chance to just try. And that's what I would give recommendations for. I don't know if I have many new activists in my audience, but if I do, just trying different forms. Like that's what the 5-day save that Trey and I keep talking about was so great, is that we could try the cubes, the vigils, the disruptions, all that stuff, and just learn all and soak it all in and find out what we gravitate towards, and find our voice in a way. So those are really powerful. And then the other thing, just the thing that like I come back to, like my buddies, like kind of not intentionally shaming me, but kind of saying like, what are you doing about it? Just like internal.
That's what a good friend does. They're real with you,
Yeah, exactly. I hope that people can like internalize that sometimes it just takes the decision, like I'm going to try something. And even that phone call, like we said, sometimes the phone call will end the campaign. Like sometimes that is all it takes. So if sometimes I feel that inertia, that paralysis of like, it'll be too hard. No, just try. And usually it's easy. and then you feel great after you've done something, especially if you get that win. But even if you don't get the win right away, or you still tried for the animals, and that's what they would want you to do, is to try.
Yeah.
So
And I do want to say that, like, I think research is very important before you up and launch a campaign. Like, you don't want to kind of bite off more than you can chew. I mean, something like the glue trap thing, that was quick. Like, we didn't really have to think too much about that. We're like, okay, glue traps, let's get this done. You know what I mean? But if you're going up against a bigger company, you might be going up against a restaurant to get them to drop foie gras. And if you didn't research, you don't realize maybe we should have gone after them later because they actually own a bunch of restaurants around the country, and I didn't realize that. And so I really need to, like, coordinate with people in other cities and see if they're on board to do this, so it's good. While I don't want people to have paralysis, like you said, about getting started. But I do think it's important to put in, like, at least a basic amount of research as far as, like, what you're getting into and all of that. So research is important. It's not like a sexy form of activism. Like, there's not like a cool video of, like, you in slow-mo, like, doing research on Instagram.
Although you can make one.
Maybe you can make one, yeah. But maybe we can find a way to make it look cooler or whatever. But I mean, the foundation of pressure campaigns are on research, and research is so important. And that is another thing that you can do from home and not even have to get out into the street and, like, do some research. That is, like, very, very much needed in the animal rights movement. So if you're somebody that's into that or would be good at that or willing to do that, then yeah, reach out to somebody who's doing a campaign and offer your services, because it's very much needed.
Well, I'm one of the people I want to interview on this channel is someone who wrote a book, and what I'm doing between, like, interviews and the meetings and stuff that I have is just reading that book, and that is activism, because I'm trying to get up to speed on the book, and it's a long one. So yeah, I think it's funny. I think I might make a video of me, like, reading with, like, the
Hey, I took a lot of time off from boots on the ground activism for a while and really committed to reading, because it can seem counterproductive. Like, you don't want to, like, just try to prepare forever before you do something, right? I mean, we've got to take some action. But like you mentioned before, I was kind of at this point in my life where I sort of felt stuck with my activism, and I feel like reading, like, really brushing up on some animal rights history as well as history in other social justice movements, and just learning about all that, learning about the strategy, learning about what they went through, learning about their wins and their losses, was really helpful for me. And so while part of the time I was in that period of reflection, I sort of, and I'm always reflecting too, but I was really focused on reflecting at that time. Um, while it's easy to sometimes think like I'm reading a book, I could be out doing a protest or something, instead. But yeah, I mean, like, really learning up on this stuff so that we can be more effective, so that we can get things done quicker and more efficiently and be educated about what we're doing. I mean, I can't express enough the importance of that. So I would highly encourage people to, pick up some books that'll help you be a better activist and read them.
Well, let me ask you about those books, but first I just want to make the point that, you had mentioned the campaign that you took on early on that you regret. And just to second what you were saying, like, it's sort of different. Like, if you're trying to lead a campaign and you've got other people following along with you, like, then you have to sort of take into account, am I wasting people's times? And I know that's where you expressed to me behind the scenes that you felt guilty. You felt like maybe I'd wasted some people's times. I asked them to do this thing, and then, but but if you're going to just take individual action, you prepare as much as you need to prepare. But yeah, if you're leading people into something, you want to know that they can count on you. One, that you know what you're doing, that you know what you're asking for, and be clear about that. But yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say, that's a good point. I mean, you don't have to do all that research. You can jump right in with somebody like CAFT, like an organization like CAFT, or an organization like the Duck Alliance. and just hop right in with people who know what they're doing and learn from them. Get a mentorship from Animal Activism Collective, or maybe somebody in one of these other organizations will kind of do like an unofficial mentorship with you, and you can just like learn from them and what they do.
Yeah, exactly. Well, but tell me a little bit about that period, and like what is the stuff that you were reading, and what were you learning, and how did it shape your activism in the years to come?
Yeah, one book that was really inspirational for me is Bear Boy by Justin Barker. I thought it's kind of like, it really reads like a novel,
Yeah.
but it's a true story about Justin. It's like a coming of age story when he was like a preteen and a teenager, figuring out his place in the world, and uh, trying to figure out how he was going to make a difference in the world for animals. And he found out about these two bears that were in this like zoo that were like in terrible condition. And he was a kid, and he was inexperienced, but he wanted to do something about it. So the book is kind of his journey along that. And then, there's a book called Why We Can't Wait by Martin Luther King Jr. that really like takes a dive behind the scenes of, his activism, like what was going on in the room when they were making these decisions. And I just thought I didn't even know a book like that existed. Like, to be able to get into the mind of somebody like that, who is an incredible strategist, is like great. So I highly recommend that book. And then there's another book called The Assassination of Fred Hampton that talks about the kind of work that he did and the kind of work that the people around him did, the lawyers, the activists, everybody. And I think one of the biggest things I took away from that book is how powerful we are when we come together, when we can form coalitions and collectives, and find ways to unify, because that's why the cops and the FBI and the government, the state, that's why they were so scared of Fred Hampton, is because of his incredible ability to unify people.
Mm-hmm.
He I mean, he was the chairman of the Black Panther Party in Chicago. They called him Chairman Fred. And even though he was in the Black Panther Party, he was able to unify with, I forget the name of the group, but there was like a white Southern type group, like Confederate flag clad group that, he talked with them and said like, hey, like, we're in this together. Like, this is a class thing, and you're getting spit on in some of the same ways that we are. And he was able to talk to them, and they were able to be unified. And he talked to a group called the Young Lords, and was able to unify with them. So they started something called the Rainbow Coalition. There was like a later version of that I think Jesse Jackson did, but this was like the original Rainbow Coalition. And I mean, his ability to unify people was incredible. And I think that's partially why they were able to make such an incredible impact. There's also, a book about Harriet Tubman that I really like. I can't recall the name of it. It's back there somewhere. Hold on, my headphones are keeping me from.
Oh yeah.
It's the Road to Freedom.
Road to Freedom.
Yeah.
Okay.
Incredibly inspiring. Like, when we learn about Harriet Tubman in school and stuff, it's like really watered down. She was a total incredible badass. Like, holy crap. She was just, I mean, just incredible. Like, this book is not watered down. This is like the real story of the kind of action she took that was just obviously incredible.
Wow. So it seems like the civil rights movement is where you've drawn a lot of your knowledge and inspiration from.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that. And then, I think another movement that animal rights activists don't look to enough is the movement in the 80s and 90s with the AIDS crisis and all of that,
Mm,
like ACT UP and those kinds of groups that stemmed from ACT UP and all that. And one thing I think is great about that movement that we can draw from is, one, it was extremely recent. I mean, like, I
yeah.
was alive in the 80s and 90s. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Like, this is something that happened in my lifetime, and yeah, the world's changed a lot since then, but also there's still a lot of things that we can learn from that movement. And there's a book that's right there, the red one, let the record show.
Yeah.
And it really dives into uh, all kinds of stuff about that movement, like even the activist drama that happened and how they had to overcome that, and groups that were splitting apart, but how they were still somehow able to like fight together. And I think something really striking about that movement as well is like really the urgency. I mean, all of these movements had urgency, but it's really compelling to read some of the stories in there about how, you know, they're fighting for these things, and the people that they are fighting with, that they're standing right beside, they might not be there for the next protest because they have AIDS and they might be dead. And so
Right.
they really, were trying to achieve their tangible goals as quickly as possible to literally save their friends from dying. And, of course, there's, other movements where that's a similar, situation, in the women's rights movement. And, all these movements are important, but yeah, that's something that kind of really stood out to me, especially because of how recent it is, I think was another part.
Yeah, well, you gave me a lot of homework to do here, Trey. But
And,
all these books sound very informative.
yeah, Animal Activism Collective actually has a bookshop. You can find it in the link tree of our Instagram, with a lot of books that are like curated by activists who are a part of our organization, as well as
Nice.
books that have been mentioned by people that have come on to do workshops with us and podcast guests and things like that. It's just kind of like a lot of different books that activists have recommended. So I'd highly recommend that people go check out that bookshop. And when you buy a book, AAC gets 10% of the proceeds. So you're not
Right.
only are you, getting a book that's going to help you with your activism, but also a little bit of that goes back into actual activism. So
Well, that reminds me, during one of our phone chats, I remember you mentioning one of those books, and it was something about burnout. It was a book about how to avoid burnout or how to deal with it. I can't remember the exact name of
I,
it.
I think you might be talking about Vistopia by Claire Mann.
It's that. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
that one.
yeah, she's a psychiatrist, and she coined this term dystopia, which is, sort of like our unique experience as vegans and as activists, where we are experiencing the world in kind of a different way because we see the world through a different lens, and that can often be very painful and sometimes even isolating.
Yeah.
And so it kind of gives some validity to that. And yeah, it's a short book. I would recommend people read it because it was something that was helpful to me. I know a lot of us, have struggles, like mental health struggles, and just go through bad times, and like
Yeah.
thinking about all this suffering and the isolation that it causes us, and sometimes. And yeah, that book was kind of helpful to me. It's something I've recommended to other people that I know
Yeah.
that are struggling with that kind of thing.
And that's one of those books you can get in the bookshop, I think, in the AAC bookshop, and they'll get like a
Probably
list
so.
of, yeah, and they'll,
I hope it's there. We can't add every book because some of
right.
them you can't add, but I think that one's in there. If it's not in there, buy it however you can get it.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, and like you described, a quick read, so something that you could get through pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't, so like you personally, like, don't I remember that you like played in rock bands when you were young or
Yeah, I
metal?
did.
Nice. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Any plans on doing that again?
No, I just yesterday I was in this group chat where we were like sharing some old pictures from when we were younger, and things like that. And one person posted their old photos of them like playing guitar, and they had the crazy hair and like makeup and all this stuff. I'm like, we need to start a band.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
really, yeah, it's something I really miss, but honestly, I don't know how much time I would have to put into something like that. But if the right people came around that wanted to do some kind of animal rights band or something like that, I might make some time. That'd be cool.
that'd be badass. We
Yeah.
need more of that. We need more of those type of bands.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Well, Trey, I'll let you go. It's been so real talking to you. I mean, like we've been friends a long time, but it's just I love having you on the show, and I really appreciate how much wisdom you impart and how much care and attention you put into this, doing the reading and like I've alluded to, having really thoughtful discussions about what's the best way forward for any number of things. And yeah, you're just a treasure. You're honestly a treasure for our movement. So I
The,
appreciate you.
the feeling's mutual, brother, and any wisdom I might have comes from so many different people that I've learned
Indeed.
from over the years, different organizations, and things like that. I've learned from a lot of incredible people. Still have a lot more to learn, obviously, and I'm learning like
As we
every
all do.
day. Yeah, but I want to shout you out, man. Like this podcast you got going is so cool. Something I've been keeping up with, and
Thank you. Thank you.
so glad you're using your voice in this way to highlight people's work, and hopefully
Mhm.
hopefully people are inspired by that, and they you know take action in their own way and find different things that resonate with them. So I really truly appreciate the work you're doing here and beyond. I know you do other stuff too, so yeah, thank you so much, man. And it's been a pleasure being in the movement with you for
Yeah.
these last several years.
And the podcast, has been so much fun because everybody I've had on is just like somebody that I legitimately just would love to have conversations with. So it's just fun. It's just an easy thing to do and like show love and like you said, kind of build coalitions, get us all working together. Cause sometimes I'll be talking to someone who doesn't like someone else or whatever. And we're all doing the same stuff. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
totally.
All right. Much love, Trey.
All right, brother. Appreciate you, man. Thanks so much.